What's going on, guys? Straw Hat Brian. I am back once again, here to deliver my Boku no Hero Academia or My Hero Academia Chapter 153 review. If you haven't read it, I'd suggest you do so now. Spoilers will be lurking in the video ahead. So, without anything left to say, let's get into this review, fam. So, story begins, we catch up with Deku and Night Eye, and they just finished defeating Iranaka, the guy who could enter into like a building, like a hallway space, like a certain area, and manipulate it and change its structure and change its architecture. So he was able to basically like create a whole new wall that didn't exist because he basically took up that area. So or reshape an area. He was able to do that. So we find out he lost that ability to do that because really he could only enter. Eraserhead mentions he could only enter into a small finite space as big as a refrigerator. So, and that's as big as a space he could really manipulate. Like in actuality, it was just the drugs that he took that amplified his abilities that finally wore off. So eventually, they got to him, and then they were questioning him. Night Eye was really questioning him, and obviously they discovered that he had no idea where the League of Villains were, and he has no idea where their whereabouts are. But he said once he comes in contact with them, he's going to kill him. Obviously, typical fodder, lines and dialogue or whatever. So Iranaka, not Iranaka, but Lockrock begins to tell Midoriya and Eraserhead, telling them that, hey, you guys got to keep going. You guys got to push forward. Forget the League of Villains and that now that they're involved, because Eraserhead did mention that if the League was involved, that they would all pull out of the mission. Lockrock realizes that they've all come too far to pull out now, to basically to just be like, hey, let's just round up everybody and just escape and just forget the little girl and just call this mission a failure. He's actually telling them to keep going and persevering. But the reason behind this is, and he says, he's like, hey, to heck with UA. Like, nobody cares about UA. Well, not nobody cares, but at the end of the day, he said UA doesn't really matter. It's just like an outlet. But he says what the right thing to do is to save that little girl because that little girl's in danger. And his reasoning is because he has a family of his own. So for his reasoning to wanting to be a hero is to protect people like his family and other families. So I like that, and especially because he says that he being self-aware as a character, realized that he was kind of hard on the kids because he didn't want them to really join the mission, or he was kind of against it at first. But because that the heroes don't really have, the pro heroes are kind of dwindling in the numbers right now, and because crime is rising now because of the whole Stain incident and all that. So the Hero Society basically have their hands full. So I thought that was really cool. I thought that, as a character, to being that self-aware, to being to having those different kind of faces to a character where, he's a family man. And people who are probably reading this who, either have families of their own or, stuff like that. It's very relatable. And then, Deku does vow to, Lockrock, saying that, he will protect Eri and he will get her back. And then, Lockrock is basically like, I'm going to hold you to it. And the scene switches over, and Toga and Twice, we get to see what they're up to. So they're kind of just feeling pretty good because they were able to sabotage the 8 precepts, but now they're thinking what can they do now? So Twice comes up with an idea. He begins to tell Toga, but we don't really get to see we don't know what the plan is, because he just whispers it in her ear. But potentially you already know that they're gonna come in sometime during this arc or the finale of this arc, and they're gonna ruin something or do something that's gonna just probably jumpstart the next arc. So then this scene switches over to, we go back to Overhaul and Deku. And so Deku punches Overhaul in his arm, because we last see Overhaul was gonna try to disintegrate Lemillion or whatever, and then he just gets his they bust through. He punches Overhaul's arm, and then Overhaul is basically kind of telling them like you guys are doing this for nothing, and we see that Deku and Eraserhead are like they basically are on the jump. Like they're like, we know what we got to do. Let's just get this over with. We know who the bad guy is. We know we gotta take down Overhaul. Ares already over here with Night Eye and Lemillion. Let's do what we gotta do. So in the midst of that, when they begin to attack, Overhaul touches the ground. He basically separates Chrono. Chrono wakes up and stops. He stops Eraserhead from basically not even stops him. He basically slows his movements because that's what his quirk does. Like once he touches you, his like clock hand, basically you can't move as quickly as you would. And because Eraserhead now has that disadvantage where because his quirk kind of got like damaged during that fight with the Nemus during season 1 or at the end of the first story arc. When that happened, basically like now his quirk has limits. So they use that against him, separating them two, and thus Midoriya now has to deal with Overhaul. So it's just Midoriya, Night Eye, and powerless Lemillion taking on Overhaul. So Overhaul, what I like though, is that Overhaul is pretty smart. Overhaul is strategic. So I'm pretty sure he already had this plan from the beginning because Eraserhead has similar abilities to Eri. So I'm pretty sure like they're probably thinking like, yo, if we can just grab him, take some of his blood, experiment on it, and then we could probably come up with another drug. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's really cool. I love the way that I feel like the author very much gives like a lot of these characters, even these villains, a lot of purpose and a lot of depth to them. There's a lot of depth to a lot of these characters. We get to see the reunion of Lemillion, Night Eye. Night Eye and Deku both recognizing how hard Lemillion's fought up until this point and basically how far they've come. And then after that, Chisaki does the most amazing thing, and he starts basically talking kind of maniacally, and he's like, Nemuto, you want to help me, you'll do anything for me, blah, blah, blah. So he grabs Nemuto, and he activates his quirk, and then he breaks down Nemuto and himself, because he has a disintegration quirk. He can disintegrate and reassemble things. So he can basically, he's like a repairman. Like if his table is broken, he could basically repair it, or he could disassemble it, or disintegrate it into whatever not disintegrate, he could disassemble and then reassemble it. So you see like an epic rebirth of like a new Chisaki, and it's like a Venom-esque like thing, but it's like, I think it's so cool that his powers can do that. Like, so can he do that and now gain more power? So in a way, is his abilities like a one for all like kind of thing, or I mean all for one, where it's like all for one, you can take abilities and activate them at will. It's like, can he just like break people down, add it on to himself, and then add that onto his arsenal? Could he re-break himself down and separate himself? Like, is he stuck like that? I'm wondering, because that was awesome. That was pretty cool. That concludes my review of My Hero Academia. I'm going to rate this chapter 2.5 out of 5. What rates it a 2.5 is basically probably the ending, because other than that, the chapter is like a 2. It's pretty much a setup chapter. But please like, share, and subscribe. Next video will be coming soon. Hit that notification bell for more, and you guys have a good day.